Welcome to today's class, and today we want to talk about series and parallel connections. Now, one thing is that in electrical engineering, most of the time we put things in series or in parallel. So we want to understand the basic concept when we say things are in series or things are in parallel. Now, when you have an electrical circuit and you want to know whether the things are in series or they are in parallel, let's start with series. How to identify things in series. Now, the first thing I want you to know is for you to know that two things are in series, the same current pass through them. The same current pass through them. The same current. And I want you to just pick this as a basic rule. The same current pass through them. Now, let's see that we have an electrical circuit like this. Now, let's say this is R1, this is R2. If I want to know if this R1 and R2 are the same, I have to check, are in series, I have to check whether the same current is passing through them. And here, most of the time, just draw a simple line and you'll be able to tell whether they are in series. You can see that in case current is flowing like this, the same current that passes through R1 is the one that passes through R2. So you say that R1 and R2 are in series. So when two things are in series, we basically add them together, R1 plus R2, basically. So let's say if I have a simple electrical circuit like this, and this is 2, this is 3, then I can easily see that the same current is passing through them. So it's 2 plus 3, and the total resistance is going to be 5 ohms. Another situation, let's say this, and I have this here as 4, and I have here as 6. Now, most of the time, it's not about how it's connected. It's about whether the same current is passing through or not. So you can see this 4 and 6. The current that passes through the 4, the same one passes through the 6. So you say 4 and 6 are in series, and you add them, you get 10 ohms. So basically, this is how you are able to identify whether something is in series or not. Let's look at another example. Let's say I have a circuit like this. And I want to identify which of the resistors are in series. Let's say this is R1, R2, R3, R4, R5, and R6. Now, which of them can you see are in series? First, let's look at this R1 and R2 to check if they are in series. You can see that the same current that passes through R1 will pass through R2. Now, don't worry about where the current is coming from. All that you are trying to see is, will the current that passed through R1, is it the same one that passed through R2? Then you see R1 and R2 are in series. You add them. Now, let's look at R4 and R5, whether they are in series. You can just see that the current that passes through R4, the same will pass through R5. As I said, don't worry about where the current is coming from. So here you can see that R4 and R5 are in series. You can add them. Now, one thing that gets a lot of people confused is, let's see if this R3 and this R6 are in series. Now, we said that the same current will pass through, and most students worry because you look at, that's why I said always don't worry much about where the current is coming from, because you realize that the current that will leave this positive terminal, when it gets to this junction, some will come here, some will come here. And the ones that will come from here, the one that will come from here will come together and come out like this. So you realize that the current that passes through R3, the same one passes through R6. Now, sometimes plenty analysis like that can get you confused. So just look at R1 and R3. Just see if in case current is passing, will the same current pass through them? Then you know that R3 and R6 are also in series. Don't worry about how the current will go and split and come back and whether the same thing will pass through. Just see if the same current will pass through them. Now let's check something. Let's try to see if R2 and R4 are in series. Now you realize that the current that will pass through R2, when it gets to this junction, some will come here, some will go there. So R2 and R4 are not in series. An example. Let me say I have this. 2, 3, 4, and 6. And I want to check if these 2 and these 3 are in series. Realize that the current that will pass through, don't worry about where it's coming from. The one that passed through the 2 ohm, when it gets to this place, it will split. So it's not the same one that passed through 2 that passes through 3. So 2 and 3 are not in series. Let's check if these 2 and these 4 are in series. The current that passes through these 2, when it gets here, is split. So 2 and 4 are also not in series. But let's try to check 6 and 2. 6 and 2, the current that passes through the 6, the same current passes through these 2. So these 2 and these 6 are in series. This is the basic way to identify whether something is in series or not. And when they are in series, you just add them. Now let's look at something in this ninth question to identify which resistors are in series and which resistors are not in series. Now let's see which resistors can you see are in series. Let's try to check this 10 and this 6. The current that passes through this 10 when it comes here is split, so 10 and 6 are not in series. Let's look at 4 and 6. The current that passes through this 4 when it gets to this junction is split. So most of the time when there's a junction between them, it prevents them from being in series. But I don't want you to use the criteria whether the junction, just try to see whether the same current is passing through them or not. Now, I want us to see whether 10 and 12 are in series. You can see that the current that will pass through 12, the same one goes to pass through this 10. So don't worry whether there's a voltage source in between the two resistors. So far as the same current that passed through the 12 will pass through the 10, then this 12 and this 10 are in series and you can add them together as 22. Now let's look at this 6 and this 8, whether they are in series. Consider the current that passes through this 6, right, is the same current that will come and pass through this 8. So this 6 and this 8 are in series and you can easily add them together. So this is the basic way to see whether something is in series or they are not in series. Now, when two things are in series and you add them together, what you do is that, let's say I have this simple circuit we started with. This is 2 ohm, this is 3 ohm, and I realize that these 2 and these 3 are in series. What I do is that I can redraw the circuit and I'll put these 2 and 3 in series. I get 5, and I'll put the answer on one of them, any one of them, and I put the answer on. So what I will do is that I will clean one of them like this. I will clean one of them like this. The thing is that you can clean any of them like this, and then I'll put the answer on one. So notice that when they are in series, you clean one of them, you close it back, and put the answer on one. Don't forget to close it back. When you clean one, you close it back and put the answer on one. That is the basic way to know things in series. So like this one that we're looking at, let's see that the question was like this, where there are values. So let's say here was 2, 4, here was 6, 8, and here was 10. And let's say we have another resistor here, which is 3. Now we can see that 10 and 8 are in series because the same current passes through them. So I can clean any of them. I can clean the 10 or the 8. So let me clean the 8, and I'll put the answer 18 on 1. Then 6 and 3 are also in series. I can put the answer on 1. So I'll put the answer on this. Then I do this and I close it back. And then I close it back. And this 2 and this 4 are also in series. I can put the answer on the 4, so 6, and close this one back. So don't forget to close it back and put the answer on 1. I could have put the answer here, or this 2, I could have put the answer here. It doesn't matter where you put it. So basically, this is how to identify whether things are in series. The same current passes through them. The same current passes through them. Now, let's move on to when things are in parallel. Let's look at parallel connection. Parallel. Now, one interesting thing is that for things to be in parallel, the same voltage is across them. The same voltage is across them. That is how you get to know whether two things are in parallel or not. An example, when I have these two resistors, if this is R1 and R2, I can, let's say this is V, you can see that the voltage V is the same voltage across R1, and that same voltage is across R2. So I will say that R1 and R2 are in parallel. Now, it becomes a little difficult when you have a circuit like this, to identify, especially let's check if these 2 and this 4 are in parallel. Now it becomes very difficult to know whether this voltage, the same one across this, is the same one across this. Another thing is for us to know whether this 4 and this 6 are in parallel, whether the voltage across this 4 is going to be the same across this 6. So sometimes it becomes a little difficult to know whether they are in series. For instance, let's say this circuit, if there was a resistor here, R3, R1 and R2 will no more be in parallel because this voltage that will be across this R1 will be shared, the rest will be shared among this and this. So it means that R1 and R2 will no more be in parallel. So sometimes it becomes a little difficult to identify just within a circuit like that to see whether the things are in parallel or they are not in parallel. So one basic way to understand whether two things are in parallel, I want us to use a simple rule. What we are going to do is that to identify things in parallel, we are going to use a simple rule, right? And the simple rule is that go around two elements, right? Two elements. And if you don't meet any other element, you don't meet any other element, then you can say the two things are in parallel. For instance, like this. If I want to check if this 4 and this 6 are in parallel, I will try to go around 4 and 6. If I go around them, I don't see any other element. An element can be a voltage source, it can be another resistor or something. If I don't see any other element, I can conclude that 4 and 6 are in parallel. But let's check 2 and 4. If I try to go around 2 and 4, I meet an element. So 2 and 4 are not in parallel. They are not in parallel. This is just a simple way to be able to know whether the same voltage will be across two things. But the way voltage is very difficult to use your eye to see whether the same voltage is across some elements. That's why I'm giving you this simple rule to go around the two elements to see whether the same whether you will not meet any other element. Let's look at something like this. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Let's try to see whether we can identify some things in series or in parallel. Let's look at this 2 and this 4. This 2 and this 4, we can see that they are in parallel. How? By going around them, you realize that I don't meet any other elements. So I can say 2 and 4 are in parallel. Now, let's look at 10 and 8, whether they are in parallel. You can see that if I try to go around, 10 and 8, I see that I don't meet any other element. 10 and 8 are in parallel. But let's check 8 and 6. 8 and 6, if I try to go around 8 and 6, I meet an element on the way. This 6 and this 8 are not in parallel. Let's look at this 6 and 10. If I try to go around 10, pass through 6, and I pass through another element, so they are also not in parallel. In the next class, which is part 2 of this course, we'll get to know more things in parallel, and later we'll see how we can combine parallel and series. See you in the next class, and we'll understand more about things in parallel.